Hi everybody, this is Anne. It's no secret that one of my favorite ways to decorate pottery is to paint with underglazes. I love painting realistic birds, flowers, butterflies, etc. But there's so much more freedom to invent your own images because you can paint them with whatever colors you prefer. In this video, I thought I'd do just that. I'll show you how to draw simple floral shaped designs on hand-built vases, then demonstrate 3 different ways you can paint them, starting with an easy black and white and working my way up to full color. Now I've already started a design on this first vase. I'll show you how to draw the blocky flowers, leaves, and vines. I like to start with a vine that stretches from top to bottom and draw a series of flowers and leaf shapes cascading from the vine. Now these little leaves are just teardrop shapes. Notice that I doubled my vine, and then I added flattened out teardrops for flowers. Next to that, I'm drawing a more complicated flower. Starting in the center, I drew 3 of the teardrop shapes beside each other. I topped it with a series of arches, then capped that with a wavy line. Notice I always start in the center and work my way out. On the bottom, again using the teardrop shape, I added 5 more teardrops and a vine stretching to the bottom border. Keep in mind that a variety of shapes and sizes makes for a more interesting design, so I wanted that flower to be much bigger than the leaves and the flowers on the vine to the right. For my leaves, I drew a straight line for the center vein, then capped the end with a circle extending down into jags and narrowing at the main stem. I continued the same leaf shape on the other side for symmetry. Beside that bigger flower, I alternated to a smaller flower with a more circular pattern, but still using the teardrop shapes encapsulated with a wavy line. In between those 2 flowers, I drew more of a cone-shaped flower, an upside-down teardrop with teardrops extending down from that one. For more detail, I added dragon's teeth staggered inside of that shape. Again, adding some simple leaves. Now this vase will be strictly black and white, so I only need 1 underglaze, the Amico Jet Black. The white of the clay acts as my contrasting white color. My favorite brush to use when I'm painting is a fingernail detailing brush which holds its point longer than a fine art brush. I began to fill in the blank spaces, leaving white areas between the strokes. Be careful not to fill in the entire flower with black, or it'll be difficult to see your original design. On the leaves of this flower, I filled in the centers, but not all the way to the borders. I used the pointed tip of the brush to paint the stem. Now make sure you have a solid coverage of black, and while I waited for the black to dry, I continued filling in the outlines around the design, encapsulating it, and continuing with some of the other flowers as well. Now once I have good coverage and the black is dry but still fresh, I like to do sgraffito. This fine line ball tool is perfect for the job. Sgraffito is where you scratch through the underglaze to reveal the color underneath. I can clean up my lines and create even more detail. Remember that sgraffito creates a little dust. Don't blow it in the air, but gently wipe it away, and wear a respirator if you need to. That small ball tool really can make fine details, which in the end really does make a difference. The more detail makes each image come to life. It adds the contrasting white to the design, making the black just pop off the piece. Now here's one that I made earlier. I tried to balance the design with big and small imagery, turning the flower heads at different angles for interest and framing the whole design with black borders. I bisque fired it to cone 04. I then glazed around all the imagery with my white liner glaze and fired it to cone 5 with a 6-minute hold. Now I'll dip my toe into the water and paint a similar vase, this time with a monochromatic scheme, or one color. I'll be using several shades of blue, Amico Electric Blue and the Baby Blue. I usually work from the center out and light to dark, so I painted the very center of this flower very light blue, and then the next row of teardrops as well. I decided to paint the upside-down teardrops in the light blue as well. I'm making decisions as I lay down the color. Note that I skipped the section over top of the teardrops, but painted the wide stretch of open space. I then mixed the two colors together and painted each tight corner with the mixture. It'll lighten as it dries and blend with the baby blue. I added dots inside that wide section for detail. Switching to the electric blue, I filled in that empty space. I'll also show you how I handle the leafy sections. I painted the baby blue on the inner section of the leaf, loosely following the curvatures of the border. I left the area between the border and the baby blue unpainted on purpose. Using the electric blue, I began to fill in all those open areas between the border and the baby blue. The baby blue underglaze has a powerful covering ability that will lighten up any color that crosses over it. Painting this way results in a variety of blue shades. Now here's one that I painted earlier. You can see that as I painted the border lines on the piece, I also added little dots and dashes of accents to each flower and leaf. I bisque fired this to cone 04. I then glazed all around my imagery with my white liner glaze and fired it to cone 5 with a 6-minute hold. The electric blue turns much darker the hotter it's fired, but the baby still keeps its lighter tone. You can see that using one color can give the piece harmony and balance. Now let's jump all the way into the color pool. I picked my favorite underglazes that mix well together and that represent each area of the color wheel, blue, red, and yellow. Most of the colors that I used here were straight out of the bottle, but I did have to mix my greens using the intense yellow with each one of the blues, plus I mixed the orange with the intense yellow and the bright red. Deciding which colors to use together can be very complicated. I want to break it down and show you 3 ways to think about how to pair colors. I'll start with the leafy section first. I'll do a monochromatic color scheme this time with green as the focal color. Starting with the yellow or green, I painted that in the center of the leaf like how I painted the leaf in the last project, leaving white along each of the sides but paralleling the borderlines. I then painted the darker green along the sides and the curled end, trying to leave some open areas unpainted. As green is a mixture of blue and yellow, I can add a touch of blue along the stem end of the leaf because it tends to be a little darker near the stem. I then used a straight yellow along the other end of the leaf where the leaf would not get as much water. That'll actually warm up your design. I then added black highlights for the veins. As the underglazes dry, they lighten up and unify due to that baby blue. When your eye sees the whole leaf, it automatically mixes to appear green. Now let's paint one of the flowers. This time I'll use an analogous color scheme, or 3 colors side by side on the color wheel, in this case the orange, red, and purple along with a pink which is really a shade of red. Starting with the lightest color, the blush underglaze, and in the center of the flower, I'm painting several layers of the pink. I know that I can paint the darker colors over the pink, so I chose to do a whole other row of the pink inside those arches, also the side teardrops, and a little in the very center teardrop. The next lightest color is the orange. It'll add a little warmth to the cool pink, so I like to use them side by side and over top of each other. The ultraviolet is the next lightest. I thought I'd fill in the outer border with that color to frame it. To complete the frame, I also filled in the area cupping the flower. Using the darkest color, the red, I filled in that arch section first. It gives the flower drama and that needed darker tone. In addition, I used that darker color to add little bits of highlight and detail in the solid areas. Now let's talk about complementary color schemes. Those are colors that are opposite from each other on the color wheel. In this case, we're using the intense yellow and the purple, which is a blue and red combo, as our focus colors. I painted these tiny flowers with the ultraviolet on the body and then the intense yellow on the petals. As the purple is made from red, I can get away with painting the side petals with that red. I finished up with this flowery vine with the tiny yellow-green leaves to carry your eye back to the yellow, again giving them a little bit of blue at the stem and yellow at the tips. The yellow and purple add a little excitement as they vibrate to the eye when they're side by side. Now here's a vase I created earlier with a full color spectrum. The black border lines in between each color helps to organize the design and keep each section separate. Then I framed it at the top with a border of bright red to unify the whole design. I brushed my white liner glaze around all the imagery and fired it to cone 5 with a 6-minute hold. These simple shapes lend themselves to an almost coloring book approach to help you become comfortable using a full spectrum of color on your pots. Thanks to the newest members of our Little Street Pottery Research Facility team. If you'd like to join the team and earn a title, click on the Super Thanks button or the link to buy me a coffee. It really helps us out if you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. See you next time in the studio.